Absolutely nothing was announced out of this federal cabinet meeting today other than more options or options are still on the table. Your reaction to that and what you realistically think this government should be doing right now?
Well, that's Trudeau speak for no options are on the table. I was able to listen to some of Nathan's comments. And you know what? You've got to give credit to the NDP because at least you know where they stand. What Justin Trudeau is trying to do here is, as he did with Energy East, is have these projects disappear because they've created such an uncertain environment for investment that they just leave. The reality is that under the Trudeau government, you've seen 4 pipelines that were prepared to be invested in. Like, this is this is $20+ billion of investment that are gone. And the other thing is that there are options that the government could have taken. This is why we put forward a motion in the House for them to table a plan by the middle of February. We're now in April, and this is what the government could be doing. This is what Jim Carr should have said. We're expediting the BC court case through the Supreme Court of Canada so that it doesn't wind its way through the court system for years. Let's create some certainty. We're going to respect the rule of law and enforce the rule of law when it comes to the protesting that's happening. We're going to invoke Section 9210C of the Constitution, which, while the pipeline is in federal jurisdiction right now, it would eliminate any remaining provincial objections around, let's say, road permitting, et cetera. And they could also call a spade a spade. The carbon tax did not create social license to build this pipeline. It's going to take political will. And he also could have come out finally and said, Bill C-69, this bill that's supposed to bring social license around environmental regulations, the Industry Association came out flat out and said the following: there will be no more pipelines built in Canada. At least with the NDP, they're honest. They don't want this developed. What Justin Trudeau is doing is so morally bankrupt. It's actually, I think it actually has national confederation implications, and it's disgusting.
Interesting. Okay. Michelle's got some pretty strong words there, Marco. I wouldn't mind getting some thoughts from you on the point she makes about trying to invoke some sort of constitutional moves to get all these provincial obstacles off the table. Why don't you do something along those lines? I know someone's even calling for the Emergencies Act to be implemented, which is sort of the replacement for the War Measures Act. That may be a little excessive at this point in time, but what do you realistically think the government has amongst those options that they were talking about in that brief news conference?
Well, I do think it's inflammatory language that we hear from some conservatives, and I don't think it's particularly helpful. I think now is the time for calm heads and for cool heads to prevail. And I think you've seen that kind of composure in the Prime Minister. I take him very much, true to his word that we're going to get this built. There's a real commitment on the part of this government to build the Trans Mountain Pipeline and to do so in a way that is sustainable and protective of the environment. Going out and making highly incendiary remarks in public does not promote a healthy confederation. And I'm calling on my conservative colleagues to be a little bit more realistic, to be a bit more reasonable.
No, what's more reasonable? This project went through years of environmental regulatory review. It was passed by the government. It's going to create so much economic wealth. And you know what? No, I'm not going to be polite while you sit here and jerk my province around and the entire country. It's beyond the point of you being able to come out and say there are no options on the table. Are you going to build it or are you not going to build it? And back it up with actions rather than Jim Carr running away from reporters. I'm sorry, Marco.
And Michelle, I want to get Nathan into this because, Nathan, you hear the emotion in Michelle's voice, and there's a lot of that in Alberta. Does BC know what it's doing to Alberta by obstructing this pipeline, which is really a lifeblood for that province?
Well, as somebody married to an Albertan with family all over Alberta, the understanding of the pride and that sense of the fierce pride of being Canadians and good Canadians in Alberta is something that you could run into the conversation all over the place all the time. What I would suggest to Michelle is that same sense of passion and dedication to home and love of home is the same dedication and passion that many British Columbians feel, that when they asked the Prime Minister when he was just a candidate, will you put the Kinder Morgan pipeline project under a better review than the one Mr. Harper used? Justin Trudeau's words were clear, on tape, and repeated. Yes, I will. So Michelle was in the government in Stephen Harper's government that had the last review process that many British Columbians and other Canadians didn't feel comfortable with. We can argue about whether it was good enough or not, but many of us didn't feel it was. So too said Justin Trudeau. He then didn't do it. He then approved it under Stephen Harper's regime and then said, but I'm Justin Trudeau. So using the same process on the same pipeline that Harper used, but now it's me, doesn't build confidence. And last thing I'd say, Don, is that when the Prime Minister gets up time and time again, almost in a bullying, arrogant fashion, and says, this pipeline will get built, I got to tell you, much like Albertans would reject anybody trying to force a decision on them, British Columbians have a fierce sense of pride, and I watched the same movie play out before. I watched the same movie play out before when Northern Gateway was proposed through Northern BC, and we were called enemies of the state for asking questions about risk and spill safety.
Last
word to you, Michelle. On this, Nathan. And Nathan, you know I have a lot of respect for you, but this isn't about forcing decisions among provinces. It's about a national decision. I actually, you know, you're right. You and I could have a discussion around the process. We're not talking about a Venezuelan process or a Saudi Arabian process where we get a lot of our oil from. Like, I think at this point, this is really about the Prime Minister having the courage to say whether or not he wants these projects. The reality is, Nathan, if I can finish, he did overturn the Northern Gateway project politically. I just wish, you know, my province is just tired of this song and dance where no one's taking any sort of political will or ownership over what is the lifeblood of, and even your province gets all sorts of funding from social programs for this. It's just such a disingenuous argument, and we're tired of it.
Calm heads, Don.
A very animated debate. I'm afraid we are out of time. Sorry about that, Marco. I'll give you extra time next time you're on a panel.
Thanks for having me.
Passionate debate. We'll talk more about this, I'm sure. All right, Power Play always welcomes your views on this or any other topic. Please reach out to us through social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or email. Our address is powerplay@ctvnews.ca. Coming up, the Green leader weighs in from the pipeline obstruction zone. Please stay with us.